Hi everyone, welcome to Lunch and Learn. I'm Scott Speck, Music Director of the West Michigan Symphony. And look who's back! It's Aldo Lopez Gavilan.
Thank you so
Welcome
much.
back. Aldo was here playing Ravel's Piano Concerto in G major, as well as Rhapsody in Blue with us several years ago, and also came to play a block concert right here in this room with his brother Ilmar. And now, this is the third and fourth time we're going to get to hear Aldo, because he's playing with the orchestra, and he's also playing a block concert the next day. I should say that the concert with the orchestra is a concert of great Latin American composers. We have Astor Piazzolla, we have Arturo Marquez, and of course, Lopez Gavilan, everyone knows. Arturo Marquez is a Mexican composer. He's still alive. Actually, I was quite surprised to hear that he was still very active, because I grew up hearing his music as just this iconic Mexican music. It turns out maybe he's 10 years older than me or something, and he's still very, very active as a composer. He's most famous for his danzones. A lot of people know number 2. It's often played. This one is number 4. It's very tricky because it has lots of meter changes. It goes from 5 to 4 to 5 to 4. You know what that's like, meter changes.
I know.
I'm making fun of Aldo because his concerto is full of meter changes too. But it's for chamber orchestra, the Arturo Marquez's piece, and it calls for wonderful solos for flute, for oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horn, trumpet, trombone, saxophone, and then the string section and piano. It's lovely, and I think you'll enjoy it. The other non-Aldo piece on the program is a piece called Tangaso by Astor Piazzolla. Just a quick story about Piazzolla. Like so many composers, Astor Piazzolla wanted to be taken very seriously in the European tradition. And just like people like Leonard Bernstein, he went to France and studied with the great Nadia Boulanger, who was a mentor to so many composers. She told him the same thing that she told so many other composers, that was the key to their success. Don't try to be like us. Don't try to imitate some European style. Be yourself. You have something special that no one else has, she said to Astor Piazzolla. You are a bandoneonist, you are a master of the tango. Why not put that in your classical music? And that's what he did, and the rest is history. He is the great master of the tango, died just several years ago, and one of the few pieces that he wrote for a small orchestra, chamber orchestra, is called Tangaso. It begins with a gorgeous section just for strings, slow, very romantic, and then goes into a fast and furious tango with a slower section in the middle. Very, very rousing and fun piece. So now, that gets everything else out of the way. The pièce de résistance of this concert is a concerto by our soloist. And I was just thinking earlier, this is the first time in my life that I've had a chance to conduct a concerto with the composer playing. So Aldo, awesome, and thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, please. I'm so flattered. I'm very, very honored to do this especially with you, Scott.
This is our at least 4th time, if not 5th time, working together.
That's right.
I've brought Aldo to every place where I work. I just think it's really important that the world get to know this phenomenal pianist, musician, citizen of the world. Aldo, first of all, let's just tell our friends about where you came from and your upbringing and your childhood. Yeah?
Of course. Well, I am Cuban. I come from Cuba, Havana. I was born and raised there, and I still live there. My entire family basically is musician or has to do with art. My father is a composer, still active, very active.
Your whole family's very musical, isn't that right?
Yes, and my mother was a fantastic pianist and great teacher. My older brother Ilmar, that you probably remember him, is a violinist and first violin of Harlem Quartet nowadays, and so on. My grandparents, and since I was a little kid, I was already into the music world. I started messing around with the piano when I was around 4 years, singing, improvising, composing. And of course, my parents right away wanted to send me to a music school as soon as possible. So I started in the music school when I was 7. And then, you know, it never stops. 7 years of music, then another 4 of middle school, and then university in London, Trinity College of Music with my great teacher, Philip Fogg, magnificent pianist and teacher from the Royal Academy and Trinity College of Music, and so on.
Let me just ask more about your childhood, because I think it's really interesting to know that growing up in Cuba, which is a culture that a lot of us don't know, have not been to, and almost has been shrouded in mystery for many years, because for the longest time we were not allowed to go there. But there's a really strong cultural emphasis there, it seems to me. I know from working in the ballet world, for example, that the Cuban National Ballet is one of the prides of the country.
Absolutely.
And it's the kind of place where if you show talent in the arts, that gets fostered, right? Through a government-sponsored system, there are opportunities for you to learn.
That's right.
Right?
You know it. You know it well. There is a big emphasis in cultural education. Let's say that most not all the schools, all the conservatories, all the colleges, all the universities are completely free of charge. So anyone that shows talent, and sometimes it used to be like teachers and juries would go to different places in the country, different provinces and towns, finding talents to bring them to those schools and conservatories. So in fact, it's right. There is a long tradition of cultural support from the government and of course the people. The people love it always. Not only the educated artists are outstanding, but the people in general, they're very musical. They sing in their parties, they dance in the carnivals, and everything is about dancing and singing and having fun with music in general.
Fantastic.
In Cuba.
I
Yes.
can't wait to visit. It's really, really overdue.
You are
talked
more than
about it last
invited.
time. Thank you. We talked about it last time. We have to make this happen. Hey, maybe we'll bring the orchestra. Wouldn't that be something?
Oh, that would be fantastic.
That would be
of
amazing. We
course.
could do some kind of collaborative thing.
Absolutely.
Well, before we dream too much about that, I wanted to ask you, so one of the things that always interested me about you as a pianist, and again, we did the Ravel G major. It might have been one of the first times you had played it. One of the
It
first
actually
times.
was the first time I
first
played
time?
it, yes.
And then we did Rhapsody in Blue with you, which is kind of a specialty piece. I've never heard anyone play it like you.
Oh, thanks.
But what really interested me is that in Rhapsody in Blue, there were a couple of spots where we stopped and you actually added an improv, and then we came back in, just as George Gershwin would have done. And you know, I mean, it's one thing to be a trained classical pianist, but it's another thing to be good at improv. I can say that because I studied piano for 20 years, and I can play a lot of things, but I don't have the ability to improvise. What is that? And
Well,
how
now
do you
you're
have that?
making me nervous. I didn't know you play the piano. Oh, wow. I have
like
to play
you,
good
Aldo.
now. Well, yes, as I told you, I had always that skill in my life. The first thing I did was improvising. So I kept it all the time. Because, you know, sometimes you lose it. I think everybody has the talent to do it, but it's not well explored or it's not well trained. And
Well, you have to have some kind of facility that when you think of a sonority or a chord, that your fingers know where to go to play it.
yeah, well, that's training.
Yeah, that's training.
That's training. But the possibility of creation spontaneously, I think all talented musicians have it in their soul, in their bodies. But of course, as always, everything has to do with training. And I think my parents knew that from the very beginning, and they always encouraged me to keep composing, to keep improvising, besides the academic training, of course. And I love it. It's part of my expression, my only truly sincere way of expressing myself.
You mean the rest of the time you're insincere?
No, not really.
I don't believe that. No.
You got me
Actually,
there.
you are one of the most genuine people I know, let alone musicians, just people.
Oh, thank
and
you.
musicians tend to be genuine because your whole life is all about expression, right? It's about finding an honest way to express yourself through an instrument. And if you're lucky, as Aldo is, the instrument doesn't get in the way of the expression, but it actually helps to elevate the expression, which is
Beautiful, yeah.
phenomenal. So now we go from you being an improviser and performer to being a composer. Now this is very similar, it seems to me, to the path that someone like Sergei Rachmaninoff or Prokofiev made, where they were famous as a pianist, but they wanted a vehicle to play the piano, and in some cases, for example, Rachmaninoff, apparently there wasn't anything difficult enough for him, so he had to write something more difficult to play. And Rachmaninoff took the Second Piano Concerto, for example, on a big tour, I think of the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And Prokofiev with his concertos. Was that the thinking behind you writing a piano concerto?
Well, not at all. I mean, you are comparing me with the greatest of the greatest. No, in fact, this was because I had the opportunity to have hung it to a great friend and conductor, Maestro Joel Rebsen, who invited me to Classical Tahoe Festival. And he asked me, do you have a piece? He knew that I was a composer. He heard me playing one of my encores after performances. So he offered me the opportunity to compose a special piece for this occasion that would be maybe 15 to 17 and let's say 20 minutes, he said.
See, that's always the problem with composers. They go way over. Okay.
And then, of course, I was very excited with that opportunity. And at the same time, I already had always my dream to compose a concerto for piano and orchestra. And also, my daughter's birthday, 18th of September, was around that time when I knew this was coming. And I had this idea to give as a present to my daughters a piece, a melody. And I started improvising in my studio at home in the night, like 3 a.m. in the morning. And this thing came up. And after that, I said, well, I think I got the melody.
Do you want to show us that melody?
Oh, of course, yes.
We just happen to have a piano here.
And yes, that was my daughter's birthday present.
And you say daughters, twin daughters.
Twin daughters,
Twin daughters.
Adriana and Andrea, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to place this here. The main thing goes.
Beautiful. And now hearing that played by the composer, I'm getting chills. It's beautiful. Of course, it's only been played by you so far.
Yes.
Is that right?
Actually, no, you're wrong.
I'm
And I
wrong.
was wrong too. I also, yes, a very known and prestigious Russian pianist came to one of our chamber music festivals in Havana. And in that time, I happened to perform the first movement with the Havana Chamber Orchestra. And she got in love with it, and then she wanted the music, and she performed it in Moscow.
Ah, fantastic.
Yes.
The piece has legs. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. All right, so at night while your daughters were sleeping, so they could be surprised. You composed this gorgeous melody, and you hear. I mean, actually, it has such a suave feel to it. It's like being on a warm Havana breeze or something like that. Anyway,
Beautiful.
But the point is that it's devilishly difficult to play for the orchestra because it has meter changes everywhere. You know, you have a bar of
Exactly.
7/16 or
it has everything.
you know, it has everything. But anyway, back to you. So then from that first melody, then what?
Yes, maybe you didn't realize because it was just the first time you hear, but as you were saying, because of the nature of the melodies were dedicated to my twin daughters. Everybody says that my twin daughters are very alike, but of course we find so many differences in between them,
Of course.
among them, and the melody maybe it's similar all the time, but always have a difference every time you play it, either in the
Slight
left
difference.
hand or a bit up or a bit out, and it's always with little details that makes always a difference, although it sounds the same.
So this is the emphasis that because it's written for two daughters and they're obviously two very individual people, that you're giving the music gets to go in different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, what a beautiful idea. No, of course I had no idea about that. I only knew 2 minutes ago that you wrote it for your daughters.
Oh, right,
So,
yes.
okay, great. So then this became the first movement.
Yes. Well, this is the main theme that will.
Yeah. It comes back, of course.
Yeah, it will come back all the way through the three movements, and that's also a thing that I wanted to make sure that happened in my concerto, so that it was one long big piece, although it has three sections. And of course, I try to do the structure as correct as possible, like exposition of the theme, a little development, and then a recap, and then a coda, and then second movement is slow. We're gonna go there, right?
Of course. No, the first movement, I was going to say,
Yes.
It comes to this moment near the end where it's really climactic, and you feel like, it's going to be one of those Rachmaninoff-like slam bang endings. But then it has the coda, as you say, and it goes back down into the very quiet sound world that it started with,
Exactly.
which is lovely.
Yes, I remember now the time I played it in Havana in this festival in the Basilica de San Francisco with the chamber orchestra. One of the most recognized and prestigious songwriters in Cuba, Silvio Rodriguez, was in the audience, and then he came to me and said, "Oh, that was a beautiful piece." I felt like it was like a huge wave. Like a
That
big
first
wave
movement
in
is
the
like
sea.
one big wave, yeah.
Yes.
It starts and ends very quietly, and it has, well, actually, it's maybe more than one wave, right?
Yeah,
It has this going on throughout it. It's really beautiful. Is there anything else from the first movement that you'd like to demonstrate? Maybe some of the
Maybe
passage
some of
work in the middle?
The
Yeah.
tricky parts
Yeah, the
with
tricky
the
parts.
rhythms.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, just so
That's
just
kind
so-
of the development there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
middle
people
section.
will know what I'm talking about.
Of course, yes.
When I say that this is really has been one of the more challenging accompaniments for a concerto for us to prepare. Yeah,
It is hard. Yes, I know. For the pianist too.
that's your problem.
So let me remember where are we? If I go.
you played the page that I have memorized. That's the hardest one. Great, it's beautiful. Now, the second movement, when I first heard this, I should say, first of all, you had the performance in Tahoe, and then you said it was also performed another time in
Boulder.
Boulder, Colorado.
Yes.
Before you did the first movement in Havana.
That's right.
And now this is really the fourth time that you've performed some of it. And of course, the Russian pianist also did it somewhere. So this is really only the fourth or fifth time that this music has ever been heard live in the world, that we're going to get to hear it. And when I heard the recording of the second movement, I said, wow, this sounds really American. It sounds like American gospel or spiritual music. And I thought maybe you could describe that a little bit for us.
Yes, you are right. It's absolutely the purpose of it. I composed this second movement inspired in the spirituals and the church music of the traditional American music. My grandfather, Lopez Gavilan, Evelio Lopez Gavilan, he was a great fan of American folk music. And as a child, I remember listening to the old records at home, these choirs singing spirituals, this music that really, I really got in touch with that. You know, I attached to that very much. And in the other hand, also, there are very close links. The same phrasing, same musical flow, probably the same soulness, no? Soulfulness, or whatever the word is, in our songs in Cuba too. In the Vieja Trova, the old troubadour music, like Cindo Garay, Manuel Corona, these very romantic and beautiful words they would sing in the romantic melodic songs that we have in Cuba from ending of 19th century, beginning of 20th century. So there is conjunction there that I thought it was a very good idea to blend them all together in the same way in a movement. So you will travel from America to Cuba, back and forth.
And back, yeah.
Yes.
Because it begins and ends with the same very simple, one of the things that that characterizes music from early American hymns or spirituals is that they use very few chords. There's just a very simple chord progression, block chords. Not a whole lot of counterpoint of voices moving independently of each other, but very much moving together, and as if a choir were singing it. Maybe you can demonstrate the beginning, yeah?
Sure.
Of the second
Actually, before I do that, of course I'll do it. I wanted to mention the intro. The intro of the second movement, it also tried to describe like the dawn, like the sun coming out of the horizon.
Feels like.
And then, you see the fields full of green and trees and clear sky when the theme comes, right? So I'm going to perform to play for you.
Sure.
The main theme of the second movement.
Yes. Yeah, and notably, that's also how the movement ends. It ends with that dominant and just holding on to the fifth, which is a beautiful connection to the third movement.
Exactly, yes.
How did you come up with this gorgeous tune?
With the second movement tune, well, as I explained before, I was inspired by this choral music from spirituals and church music, and from the Nueva Vieja Trova melodies songs. Also, I actually probably am very prolific at night. That was a very late night when I got this melody in my head, and I said, wow, I have to do something with it.
Whoa, whoa. Because you can never control when inspiration is going to hit, right?
Exactly, that's right.
You can tell yourself, I'm going to write something now, and then you end up with, I don't know what,
Exactly.
but artificial sounding music. But yours sounds so natural, and I'm sure you could all hear what I'm talking about, what we're talking about, with this hymn-like feel to it. At the very end, the last couple of phrases, some of the harmonies become surprising, not what you would get in a typical spiritual or hymn.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
It gets more modern, let's say, a little bit more jazzy.
Yeah.
Although the spirit is the same, very spiritual, very peaceful, very loving.
Very much so. And it stays rather peaceful throughout the movement, although it gets louder, and there's a moment when the whole orchestra kind of joyously sings this same spiritual. It is joyous. It's not fraught with conflict or anything like that in this movement. Sounds like it's written by someone who, at the moment, is feeling comfort or contentment, maybe.
Very nice,
Yeah.
very nice put it.
So then that goes into the third movement, which one thing I see which is similar to the second is it has a lot of block chords. So where everyone is moving at the same time. That's what I mean by block chords. Like you imagine if you're at the piano and you're playing 4 notes, and then you play another 4 notes, and they're moving together. The orchestra does that as a whole, playing block chords, but it's much faster, more furious, and with some very interesting excursions. So tell us about
Yes,
that.
this one is very rhythmic, very uneven, like unstable. I want to feel that people are in a rush, in a not comfortable sitting in their seat. They have to move, and these kind of things, but in a positive way, not in an uncomfortable way, right? So like excitement, maybe is the word, and of course. Inspired in Cuban rhythm, in jazz rhythm, there is a section where, even in the middle section of the concerto, where I tried and I managed to put all the things from the themes from the first movement, the themes from the second movement, and the theme from the third movement in one same section, which is actually an achievement for me.
That's an achievement, period. That's what Mozart did in the finale of his Jupiter Symphony.
Yes.
Mozart and Gavilan.
And that is all blend with, I'm sure you're familiar with this new rhythm, reggaeton, which is a very popular rhythm in Latin America.
Maybe you can show us.
And yes, I mix it with all kind of jazzy styles.
And show us the main theme, like the beginning of that movement.
Sure.
Well, all right. And for the rest, you're going to have to come or listen on Friday night to the performance of Emporium. Oh, let's talk for a second about the title. Why did you decide to call the concerto Emporium?
Good question, yes. Well, as I told you before, the story of the concerto started by a birthday present for my daughters. And because it was for them, for Adriana and Andrea, I thought it was a nice idea to title it as Emporium, where it's a place where you find different little beautiful things made, handmade and magical, that every single piece had their own little story.
And from all over the place,
And
right?
from all over the world, from all over the place. And they actually loved the idea. They were very happy with that present.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When they actually heard the concerto, what was their reaction?
Oh, they loved it. Right away, they loved it. And in fact, I have to confess, I sent to one of them, Adriana, the piano part, so they can start looking at it.
Whoa. And that's a hard piece.
I know, I know.
But they both play, yeah?
They both play. They
Yeah,
both play piano.
that's
And then one,
amazing.
Andrea plays also flute. She's doing very well with it. And Adriana is also practicing the guitar.
Wow. It's
So it's
the musical family
Very
continues,
sweet,
right?
very sweet.
What a beautiful gift. If any of you are looking for the kind of gift that Aldo gave his daughters for a birthday, we have a composer available right here.
That's a good.
Aldo, that's so great. And then, so that's Friday. So Friday evening at 7:30, you'll hear the West Michigan Symphony play the piece by Arturo Marquez, his Danzón number 4, and you'll hear Tangaso by Astor Piazzolla, and you'll hear Emporium by Aldo with the composer himself at the piano. And then Saturday night, right here in this room, Aldo is going to play a recital. And tell me what kinds of things you'll be playing.
Well, I am planning to play one of my latest album, titled Playground. It's a CD, a recording that I did in France, in Toulouse, after an invitation to a very prestigious piano solo festival there. The director of the festival asked me to record an album for them. And there's several songs there composed by myself. The title is Playground, and I will be playing mainly those songs. I might maybe add a little bit of Bach, maybe? I don't know. Let's see.
But it's a thrill to have you back, Aldo. It's a thrill to work with you now for, I guess, the 5th time, and it certainly won't be the last. And thank you for sharing your great talent and your music with us and Emporium.
Well, I have to say the same. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to play together and to share music together with these wonderful musicians and great person that we have in the West Michigan Symphony. And all the team is fantastic.
It's a great team, and it's a wonderful community here. You know, I'm always saying, people have always heard me say, it's a very fertile ground here for music making. This is a place where people just love music, and we can tell on the faces of our audience when we get to see them, and we're imagining that when you're at home. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you this weekend.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Aldo.